Is known as one of Europe's best cities for street photography, but today I'm going to find out, is that really the case? So let's talk about it. For those that couldn't tell, this is Lisbon, and according to the internet, this is one of the best cities for street photography. In fact, if you were to ask ChatGPT for the best European cities for street photography, Lisbon comes up as #1. If that's what ChatGPT says, then it must be true. And if you couldn't tell, I am actually back in London. I arrived yesterday and just wanted to really, let the thoughts marinate before giving my overview of Lisbon. So starting off with the positives, when I first got to Lisbon, it was very clear. It's a very beautiful city. I sort of quickly realized there's going to be abundance of good photos here. So the first pro I want to talk about is the locations in Lisbon. You might be wondering, what's it like to shoot there? Where should I go? And to that, I would say Lisbon has a bit of everything. There's a neighborhood called Alfama, which has loads of sort of narrow, old-looking buildings. There's more central Lisbon, which has, a lot of open space, a lot more sort of characters, a lot of color in the city. Buildings have different colored tiles on them, different textures. You also have along the river where you can get some cool shots. Another location that's really cool, not far away from Lisbon, is a town called Sintra. It's sort of up in the mountains. There's castles there, which you can get some really cool shots as well. So yeah, I sort of feel like there's a bit of everything to shoot in Lisbon, and it's also all not very far away. I think Lisbon, I found it to be very walkable. It's big enough to sort of get lost in and, really feel the sense of exploring, but not too big, to the point where you feel like you're never going to see it all, and you just feel so small in comparison to this massive city. Another pro in Lisbon is it's a very safe city. In fact, I think it gets voted for Europe's safest city, which I don't know who gives that award, but whilst being there, I can definitely vouch for it. I definitely felt safe and didn't feel like my phone was going to get snatched, which, I do feel in London. The third pro to mention is the people. Generally speaking, I had no issues photographing people, as you can in some other cities. So the general attitude to photography is quite chilled there. Even though most people reacted fine to being photographed, obviously, wherever you are, gauge the vibe. Each context is different, especially if you're in quieter neighborhoods such as Alfama, for example. Okay, so one issue I did find in Lisbon was over tourism. Now, to be fair, I think this is an issue a lot of cities have, not just Lisbon, especially in prime, peak season, middle of July. Yeah, a lot of the landmarks and viewpoints just had loads of people, loads of tourists, which I guess is to be expected, to be fair. But on certain places, like there was a castle in Sintra, I think it was called Pina Palace. The amount of people there did actively take away from the place. Obviously, I'm not suggesting don't go there, but I'm just saying be mindful. When you do go to Lisbon during peak season, expect a lot of people. And I'd say to help overcome that, basically just get up early and visit, these landmarks earlier on in the day. That's when, they'll be a bit quieter. And the second thing to note about Lisbon is it is very hilly. Now, I think this is always a pro and a con. You can get some cool shots with the hills. Also, I think it makes Lisbon, it sort of adds to its charm and what makes Lisbon unique. But saying that, for those that, if you are less mobile, for example, then I think, you will struggle to get around here. Now, to possibly avoid any injuries with the terrain, I would suggest wearing sort of stable, comfortable shoes, and also be mindful of your footing, especially when sort of capturing on the go shots, where you might not be looking where you're going. Okay, so some tips and sort of things to consider shooting in Lisbon. First thing is gear. So for context, I shot everything on my Fuji X100V, which is a fixed sort of 35mm equivalent frame. I would suggest bringing a zoom lens or a camera that has a zoom lens. I think the thing I found was, especially in central Lisbon where there's a lot of straight roads, there were times where I wanted to zoom down into the street, sort of get a more sort of isolated shot. Rather than my 35mm, which is obviously very, very wide. But saying that, I think you do want to keep your setup quite light. So I'd probably go for maybe a 28-70 lens, and probably maybe just that, to be honest with you. Maybe a prime as well, if you like primes. In terms of tripods, gimbals, I think I would probably leave those at home. And of course, bring spare batteries, bring spare SD cards. You know how it goes. The absolute worst thing is when you're traveling and your camera dies, you don't have a spare battery. You need to go back to the hotel and charge it. Yeah, bring spares of everything, and yeah, you should be good. So, is Lisbon the best European city for street photography? Maybe. To be completely honest, I probably haven't been to enough cities to give sort of a true representative answer. But what I can say is it is a great city, has a real sort of vibe going on there. The people, the buildings, sort of the atmosphere. Yeah, it's a really cool city. One that I'm sure you'll get some really great shots in. So yeah, those are my thoughts of Lisbon. Hopefully you guys learned a thing or two. Feel free to DM me any questions and I'll be sure to get back to you. And yeah, hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace.